Welcome to you guys who are coming in for our webinar. We'll just wait for everyone to join. Thanks for tuning in. Exciting. It's lovely to see all our customers joining in here. So we have a few attendees now. I'm going to play a little introduction, which is a video of the La Braccesca estate to warm us all up for our Italian extravaganza this morning. So hopefully this works. Let me try. There we go. Apologies, I realized there might well have been no sound there. There was actually very good music, and that would be the joy of the joys of computers. So apologies for that. At the end, I'll replay it and get the sound sorted while we're talking. So I'm going to move away from that one. There we go. And say good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning into our webinar. Love the fact the first technical issue has already happened. I'm Harriet Tyndall of Tyndall Wine Merchants, and we really miss you all, our customers of both Tyndalls and Searsons, Tyndalls especially, and we're with you in this, and I'm very glad we can all connect over a bit of wine today on this lovely rainy day. So I hope you've all received your samples. I haven't had anything to the contrary. And those who don't have samples, thank you for tuning in. You will get a lot of benefit out of this as well. If you could have 2 glasses in front of you so you can compare your samples and a spittoon so you can pour them away afterwards, we'll be tasting in pairs. So do keep that. It's up to you whether you want to spit or not. Obviously, you're not driving anywhere today. Bring on the days when we do get to taste together. But the advantages, I suppose, of tasting virtually are A, that you don't have to drive home, and B, importantly, that we can get Riccardo and Giorgio together, the technical director of La Braccesca, Riccardo, and Giorgio, the winemaker at Mortelle, together for a tasting, which is something that wouldn't happen in real time because they're both very busy people. And obviously the icing on the cake is Filippo. And we have Chiara in the background doing all the heavy lifting and the hard work. So thank you guys for being here today. So we'll have lots of information today on the region, the diversity, the myriad of styles. I just think it's fascinating. And if you have any questions, please use the question and answer sort of app thing on it to ask, and I'll keep an eye on it. If there's something you really, really want to ask and I'm ignoring it, just ask again. I should be able to get to you all though. We will be recording this. If any of you need to watch again or have to be called away, that's no problem. So we plan to run for about 90 minutes. We'll see. We'll see how long Filippo's introduction lasts. So I'm going to introduce the panel. We have Giorgia Dimitriou of Mortelle. We have Riccardo Cecchi of La Braccesca, and doing an overall introduction for Antinori is Filippo, who I think you all know quite well. So I'm going to ask Georgia to introduce herself and speak a little bit about where she's been, what she's done. Over to you, Georgia.
So hello, everybody. It's really nice being here and knowing that you are numerous out there watching us. My name is Georgia Dimitriou, and as my last name reveals, I'm Greek. So a few words about me, traveling a bit back in the time. The only way to move around nowadays, by the way. Back in 2009, I graduated from Agricultural University of Athens, and I left Greece to continue my studies in France, and where I had my master's degree in viticulture and winemaking in Supagro de Montpellier and Unité de Bordeaux. My adventure started at Château Kirouan, a Grand Cru Classé at Margaux appellation. My first and quite precious experience. After that, I kept traveling around the world. I worked in Napa Valley, California, in Yarra Valley, Australia, and Marlborough, New Zealand. These steps brought me back in Bordeaux, where I took on the position of winemaker in Pomerol for a couple of years. But I guess my heart was beating for Italy after all. So in 2015, where the opportunity came up to become the winemaker of Mortelle and work for a wine legend, the wine legend of Italy, Antinori, well, I couldn't miss it. So here I am today with you.
Thank you, Georgia. Brilliant. I'm going to pass over to Riccardo Cecchi of La Braccesca. Over to you, Riccardo.
Yes, hello everyone. Well, I graduated in 2014. I graduated in 2014 in Florence at the University of Agriculture in Florence. And then I left Italy, of course. I went to France and I studied in the same places where Georgia did. So I was between Supagro and Bordeaux for 1 year. Then the Euromaster also had the second year. So I moved to Geisenheim in Germany, university very close to the Mosel. And after that, I did another master, which was with the OIV, so the International Organization of Wine and Vines, which was based in Paris. And this gave me the opportunity to travel a bit around the world. I visited almost 35 countries in less than 1 year and a half. And in the meanwhile, I got to work when there were the harvest seasons in Napa Valley, but mainly in Italy. So, of course, in Tuscany, also in Sicily. And the last experience I had was here close to the Bargino, where we are right now with the Antinori. Was a little winery in San Casciano. And then Antinori put a look on me and decided to take me here under its wing. And then I'm here as a brand manager of La Braccesca, which is the estate that Antinori has in Tuscany, close to Montepulciano, so southeastern part of Tuscany. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Riccardo. And now I'm going to ask Filippo to give a relatively short introduction on the Antinori family and the estates for those of you who don't know that much about them. So, Filippo.
Okay. So welcome to everybody. We have 1 hour and a half, right? Tasting. So I will speak for about 1 hour and 29. So I'm gonna have 1 minute to taste the one. No, I'm kidding. You know, I'm the old guy in the room because I've been working for Antinori for about 30 years. And by in the commercial part of the company, not neither an enologist or viticulturist, nothing at all. So, but I play through the experience that I have having worked for so long for Antinori. What I can say is that Antinori is a family-owned company, the Antinori family. It all started back in 1385. So now we are in the 27th generation. when Giovanni Di Piero Antinori joined the Florentine Arte dei Vinatieri, which in English translated by winemaker's guild. So since then, a member of the family has always played, let's say, a role in the winemaking world, either as a wine merchant or landowner, buying or selling grapes and so on. But it is in the last, let's say, 60 years that Antinori has seen a huge acceleration in terms of, let's say, investment, land purchasing, up to becoming nowadays Europe's largest premium vineyard owner. Because our mantra is, if you want to make a good wine, you have to own, let's say, the vineyard. So we are a full cycle producer, from planting vines.
I'm going to stop you for a minute,
Yes.
Filippo. We thought the sound isn't great. We were just having a little online discussion on it. Do you have, are there any headphones in the room that you can use, or use Riccardo's computer?
Perché non funziona?
Yeah. There we go. You can see, you can
okay,
see
okay.
in Italy, they are miles apart. There we go.
Okay. Can
Oh
you
my
hear?
God, that is so much better, Filippo.
It's not my fault. It's the technology that betrayed me today.
Oh,
So
I mean, you know,
you
virtual
didn't,
tastings. We don't
you
need
didn't
to.
hear anything. You didn't hear anything of what I said.
A little bit, but it was very muffled. So I think we're going to have to extend your talking time a
So
little
now
bit longer.
you're lucky because now I got half the time that I had before. So I mean, I'm going to repeat a bit what. So about me, I mean, 30 years in Antinori in the commercial, let's say, segment part of the company. So I'm not neither an enologist or viticulturist, but let's say I draw on my experience in this, let's say, in the winemaking, in the wine world. So about Antinori in brief, the Antinori family has been in the wine business since 1385, a date which marks the, let's say, joining of Giovanni Di Piero Antinori to the Florentines Arte dei Vinatieri, which was a minor art, which translates as winemakers guild. So since then, a member of the family has always been involved in the wine, let's say, industry, in the wine business, either playing the role of wine merchants or, let's say, buying and selling grapes. But I was stressing that it is in the last, I would say, 60 years, and mostly in the last 30 years, that Antinori has, let's say, given a strong impulse, acceleration to the purchasing of land, of vineyards, let's say, so as to become a full cycle producer, to become fully independent, from our entry-level wines up to our top wines like Tignanello Solaia. So our mantra is, a good wine can be made only if you, let's say, can count on your grapes. So that's why nowadays Antinori at the moment is Europe's largest premium vineyard owner. So we are a full cycle producer. We buy land, plant vines, pick grapes, ferment, macerate grapes, bottle the wine and sell the wine through a network of importers, one of which is Tyndall Wines, which is doing, by the way, a great job for us. And so Antinori is at the same time a custodian of traditions, but at the same time is known to be a very modern and innovative winery, because throughout its long history, it is known for having made very bold choices, like, just to mention a few, abandoning the use of straw cover flags where the old Chianti were bottled, because it was clearly good, a good thing, but not certainly was not conveying a good image for the Chianti appellation in general. Then the first to produce a Vino Novello, for instance, in Italy, along with Gaia. Perhaps if you know that Gaia was producing long time ago a Vino Novello, Vino. The first to abandon the Chianti Classico appellation with the revolutionary wine that was Tignanello. Tignanello was made in the heart of Chianti Classico, but let's say we break away from the appellation because at that time the Chianti rules dictated that white grapes had to be blended with Sangiovese. So linking to old tradition, to the old formula of the Chianti making made by Bettino Ricasoli, which, let's say, dictated, let's say, the blend of Malvasia and Trebbiano along with Sangiovese to render the wine drinkable, because the Sangiovese at that time was too harsh, with rough edges, was virtually undrinkable. So in a few words, Chianti, long time ago, at the time when Tignanello was invented and crafted, was a wine meant to quench thirst, not certainly to spark emotions, or let's say, or good quality. And that was one of the most important moves that decision that Antinori made, and that was a moment in which Antinori and the Italian wines were started to be taken seriously by international audience, tasters, and so on. And from Tignanello onwards, Solaia, and so on, many Tuscan producers, and not only, started making the so-called Super Tuscan. So Antinori has been always a forerunner, has always been at the forefront of innovation. So it's a very old family, but at the same time, very modern in many ways. Now, the president of the company is Albiera Antinori. The two sisters, Allegra and Alessia, both plays different role within the company in different, let's say, segments of the commercial segments of the company. But Piero Antinori, nowadays the honorary president, still is every day in his office. He is very adamant about quality, never compromising. Is very democratic in its approach to the wine industry, because Antinori can craft wine that cost a few euros up until crus like Tignanello and Solaia. So we, in a way, adhere and respect the tradition that wants wants wine to be a daily pleasure, not certainly a pleasure for a few. That's why we have a large gamut of wines and prices. Antinori, and then I finish, has several investments in Tuscany in the very well-known areas like Chianti Classico, Bolgheri, Nobile di Montepulciano, or Brunello di Montalcino, but new emerging areas today is like Le Mortelle in the lower Maremma, as well as in Piedmont and in Puglia, and abroad as well. I'm not gonna mention all of these investments, but these should give you the idea of how Antinori wants to put itself in question, not willing to rest on its laurels, but advancing and, let's say, risking a lot, investing everywhere. So if anybody later has questions about Antinori in general, I'm gonna be here, and I leave the word to others. Thank you very much. Thank you, Harriet, and all the participants. Certainly.
Thank you, Filippo. That's brilliant. That was very impressive as well. Tight timing. Was excellent. So I'm going to share the screen again, just as a little guide to get us going. A family business built on discovery and innovation. And I'm sure that throughout this webinar, we might have questions about why Maremma, why Montepulciano, why did Piero Antinori decide to go there? So we'll broach those as we move on. Let me just move the slide on. No, hold on. So what I find fascinating is the fact that fascinating and scary is the numerous indigenous grape varieties and international grape varieties and different names for all these grape varieties within Italy. There are thousands and thousands of varieties, thousands of different soils, and thousands of different microclimates within the regions. So, you know, I hope today we're going to touch on a little bit of that. We're not obviously going to expand on all of that, but we'll give you an idea of why the wines around the areas of Italy taste so different. So what I'm going to say now is, if you can have the first two wines in your glasses, so that is the Vivia and the Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, the 1 and 2 basically. And we're going to move on. And we're going to ask Georgia again to
Yes.
talk about her estate, production levels, climate, varieties planted, and the sustainable activities. And Georgia, don't be put off by the slide. I might just go through some pictures as you're talking. Yeah, so over to you.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, the estate is located in the heart of Lower Maremma, close to the town of Castiglione della Pescaia, in about 10 kilometers from the sea, in the province of Grosseto. So we are in south of Tuscany. Especially for someone who has never been to Maremma, I must say that it's a really timeless region with ancient roots and a really unique place from a naturalistic point of view. We have actually the Italian elegance in harmony blended with the wildness of its landscapes. To start with the name and dispel any doubts, La Mortelle in the local dialect stands for a wild myrtle. So it's a fragrant shrub that grows along the coast of Maremma and became the symbol of the estate. The property is consists of 270 hectares all around the winery, 170 of which are planted in vineyards. Our main varieties are black varieties, international ones, so Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and a small parcel of Carmenère. The white ones include Vermentino and Mansonica, which are local varieties, Italian ones, and a part of Viognier. Coastal Maremma, just to give you an idea of the climate, we are in a warm Mediterranean climate we have. So with warm and dry summers and mild winters, rainfalls that are concentrated in the autumnal months, fortunately after harvest. So we have a really a lot of sunshine, a lot of it, and it's an ideal place because we have for grape growing, because we have little or almost no risk of spring frost and optimum conditions of flowering and fruit set. So yeah, its position, it's quite ideal for late ripening varieties such as the international ones that I mentioned to you. They do have all the time they need here to really mature. And we have mild water stresses depending on the parcel, on its exposure to the sun, and different type soils that can go from more sandy and clay ones to more stony ones up in the hills, as you can see in the photo, on the hilly parts of the estate. Yeah, our production levels are around 250,000 bottles per year. And as for sustainability, well, it's a great issue for Maremma, for the whole area. As I said before, it's a really unique place from a naturalistic point of view. So you should know that a great part of the coast of Maremma is considered to be protected national park, and the locals do live from ecotourism. So the Mortelle undoubtedly is on the forefront of these developments. The idea for the whole project of Mortelle, started in 2009 from the desire of Antinori family to build a modern winery, which without compromising the natural beauty of the place, of the area, and focusing on natural building materials, on sustainable design, and on minimizing the impact towards the environment. So the architectural studio that took on the project actually reconstructed the pre-existing hill and hid in there the winery. The idea was to take full advantage of both gravity and thermic isolation. The cellar is actually pretty amazing as well. The fact that the whole project was completed in 2 years, just 2 years, which is quite fast. The cellar is designed in 3 levels to accompany the grapes from the reception through to all vinification winemaking procedures, so fermenting and aging barrels, barrel aging and bottling. So you can see here the extremely beautiful barrel room.
I think is it true that it's built down into the rock, Georgia, because that helps with the humidity for aging the barrels?
Yes, it's actually the thermic isolation, as I was saying. So the conditions are quite stable during the whole year. And we also have infiltration of water through these stones that you can see. It's a particular stone called arenaria that we can find in the soil of Mortelle, so it's a kind of stone, a sandy stone, and we do have infiltrations that help to maintain the humidity. Yeah, exactly. We have, apart from gravity and other saving energy technologies, really innovating ones at Le Mortelle.
The carbon dioxide circulation is very clever as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a big problem at that time. I mean, how to evacuate all the CO2 produced during fermentations from a winery, which is practically into the hill. We thought to take advantage of the gravity as CO2 is heavier than oxygen. So at the most profound level, at the lower level of the winery, we constructed a room where the CO2 goes there by gravity, and with tubes that follow the gravity as well, we evacuated towards the plants, towards the vineyards, where it can be done a sort of recycling of the CO2. So the plants can use it for photosynthesis and release it as oxygen back to the nature.
Yeah. It's brilliant, nature doing its work.
Yes, and all this without using any energy. I mean, without pumping out CO2, just taking advantage of gravity. And yes.
That's brilliant. That's wonderful, Georgia. I'm going to ask Riccardo about La Braccesca now, but I have to say, when we can travel again, guys, Le Mortelle is quite amazing. We did a team trip over there in better times, and it was so impressive. We all decided that a James Bond film should be filmed there. You could see Daniel Craig sort of shooting over the side and sliding down the things, and so in the future, we hope to see that happen. Okay, so Riccardo, I'm going to ask you to talk about La Braccesca, and I'll move through the slides a little bit while you're talking. So, okay, over to you.
So, La Braccesca was bought by the Antinori's family in 1990, and at that time it was almost the same that you see right now, in a very worse condition. I mean, then of course, as soon Antinori arrives and he creates this location as a real and proper cellar and aging cellar, and these allow us to start producing one of the first DOCG of Italy, which is the Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. It was actually the first also before the Brunello di Nobile, Brunello di Montalcino, because the first little thing that you have on the neck of the bottle, let me show you. So actually, this little label that certifies that is a DOCG, the first one was for a Vino Nobile. Clearly at the time, the Vino Nobile, because of its history and it was, as you all know, based with Sangiovese grapes. It was a very important appellation that, of course, started growing a lot. And this strategic position, as you can see here in the map, which is, it seems really far from the city Montepulciano, but this is actually a strategic position because on the other side, so on the right side of La Braccesca, we have Cortona. So these allow us to be in a sort of in between of two different cities with two different soils and peculiarities, and allow us to produce both Vino Nobile di Montepulciano and Cortona DOC, which is one of the most recent appellations, and we will get back to it later on. So as I was saying here, as you can see, we are pretty close to Montalcino, but it's in Montalcino that stopped the Mediterranean influence. So that's why in Montepulciano, in our area, we talk about continental climate, which is very, very, very similar also to all the internal areas where we grow vines. I'm thinking about most of the French appellation, I'm thinking many others. And clearly the continental climate allows us to have both very, very cold winter with lots of rain, but at the same time, we have a very hot and dry summer. So this big thermic excursion that we have between the temperature, we have almost always 15 degrees different between the maximum temperature and the lowest temperature. This allows our vines to keep this acidity, which is something that is very important in our area. Because of course, especially when we have very hot and dry summer, the acidity is something that usually is not one of the focal point. But the fact that we have very cold winter and the temperature change this way, this allows us to have these beautiful acidities that not only gives pleasure when you drink the wine, because it doesn't get too tough or too heavy, but at the same time, it allows us to have very, very, very aging with the wines with a very important aging potential. So as you can see, there's another particularity, which is the Lago Trasimeno, which actually gives this sort of what we call subcontinental climate, because clearly the Lago Trasimeno, the Lake Trasimeno, influences a bit the temperature, the cold temperature in winter and the very hot and dry temperature in summer. So it's sort of mitigated. And this allows us again to have this sort of very balanced product. Then talking about the soils, as you were showing, we are exactly on top of the Valiano hill, let's say, which if you take a look from a distance, it doesn't really seem a hill, because as you saw, it's pretty flat area. We are in the Chiana Valley, which got this name from a typical animal, I mean, the chianina, which is a particular kind of meat that we produce in the area. And Valiano, however, it's about 300 meters above the sea level. As you can see here, we have mainly sandy soils, and that's why in this area and going towards the right, we have mainly the Cortona DOC appellation. While getting back to the Montepulciano, so on the left side, we start having some clay, and that is exactly where we produce our Nobile. In fact, we have, of course, as you saw from the first picture, a lot of vineyards around the state, but we have also some plot on the hill of Montepulciano, which are located exactly on the clay soils. Because as you know, there are varieties that grows much better on clay soils and other varieties that grows very well in sandy soils. So that's why this strategic position allows us to produce both in an excellent way. And well, I mean, I don't want to run out of time. If you have particular question, then.
No, that's brilliant, Riccardo. I found it fascinating when we visited that the fact that you're standing on the estate, and if I go back, you're looking, one side is in Cortona and the other is in here we go, in Montepulciano. So
you can see Cortona, because if you go in the background, you see that little town on top of the hill. That is Cortona.
Yeah.
While where we are sitting right now, there is Montepulciano. Yeah, exactly. That is Cortona, and where we are sitting right now is Montepulciano. So imagine this situation. We are exactly in the middle.
And so, you know, you think that it's one estate, it's very straightforward, but we introduce the complexities of two regions under one estate. But it's so interesting and fascinating. And when we taste, everyone will see just how diverse the offering from La Braccesca is. So we've spoken a lot. Again, if anyone has any questions, I'm keeping an eye on it. But let's do our first tasting. So we have our first glimpse of the 2020 vintage of Vivia, and then we also have La Braccesca 2017, the Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. So I'm going to ask Georgia to introduce her wine, and I'm very much looking forward to tasting. Over to you, Georgia.
Yes, thank you, Harriet. So Vivia, that you're having in the bottle, by the way, it's we bottled it like a couple of weeks ago. So you are maybe the first one to taste it. So Vivia is a really delicate, fragrant white wine. It's a refreshing blend between local and international varieties. We have, it was thought to be something different from the monovarietal white wines that we find a lot in the region, so Vermentinos and Sonica. And of course, the idea was as well to distinguish it from our Vermentino di Guadaltasso. So its name is, we say it's coming from a word pun, like the three varieties that compose it, Vermentino, Viognier, and Sonica, but it's actually Marchese's granddaughter name, Vivia. So yeah, it's 60% Vermentino, 50% Vermentino, 40% Viognier, and 10% of Ansonica. It's a wine that I don't know how it's called in English. I mean, in Italian, it's solare. I mean, you can feel the sun when you taste it. It's a wine. You have the translation, Harriet?
No, but I was just going to say that today we're not feeling the sun in Ireland, but it is certainly bouncing out of the glass. The aromatics are fantastic on this wine.
Yes,
and I get what you're saying. Yeah.
If I turn the camera, you will see it. So here today is a really sunny day. It's a really beautiful day.
Well, it's coming to us. It's coming.
Yeah,
it's coming.
Through the glass, exactly. So in the glass, you have the peachy character of Viognier. You have pear aromas and green apple aromas of Vermentino. Well, you even have hints of herbs that's coming, reminding a bit on Sonica. So yeah, it's a really fragrant and enjoyable wine. So in the mouth, it's kind of fresh, a bit of salty, and you find the same citrus aromas that you have in the nose as well. Yeah.
I think it's lovely and textural, Georgia, because obviously there's no oak involved here. It's very much about the fruit.
Yeah, exactly.
And the acidity is holding its own and just displaying those flavors beautifully, isn't it? I love the freshness of tasting a new vintage when it's just as it should be and just aromatic and delicious. I hope that everyone at home is enjoying it as well. It certainly wakes the palate up in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. Thank you. Thanks, Georgia.
You're welcome.
And I now know I'll never forget the varieties in it because of the Vivia. Obviously, I knew them all the time, Filippo. This actually isn't available in Ireland at the moment, but if we get good feedback, I'm sure we can change that very rapidly. Okay, Riccardo, over to you with our first red of the day. Thank you, Georgia.
You're welcome.
So here we have the Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. This is actually the flagship of our state because clearly represent the history of this wine and also the estate. As you can see here in the label, you see this armed arm, right? Oops, there we go. And it has been kept from the noble family from who was bought the winery in 1990. They were called Conti Bracci. So Conti means is like a sort of noble family. And Bracci in Italian means arms. So that's why you have this arm, which is armed with the sword. So such a traditional image, which is exactly representing the tradition of the Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. The blend in this wine is, I would say, mainly Sangiovese. Then in some vintages, you have some hint of Merlot, but it's just tiny bit that it varies, of course, every year, depending on the vintage. And we harvest the grape, we macerate it, not too much, because we don't want to extract too many polyphenols, because otherwise the wine would become very tough. This has to be a very easy and enjoyable wine. We are trying actually to remove from the minds of the people the idea of that Vino Nobile is something really tough and heavy, and you have to drink it only with the big stacks or whatever, meat. No, it's not this way anymore. We always like to have this sort of acidity and also the fruitiness of the Sangiovese that I'm sure you feel by smelling it.
Riccardo, just to touch on the fact that on our notes, obviously, we've used the traditional name for the region of the Sangiovese, the Prugnolo Gentile. Just because you Italians, you love to confuse us sort of common folk, and you love to put in all these extravagant names in different regions. So we think we're tasting a completely different variety when actually it's Sangiovese. So thanks for that.
So I mean, it's very simple thing because in Tuscany, Sangiovese is one of the main grape variety, and it has always been this sort of fight between Chianti Classico Sangiovese, Chianti Sangiovese, Brunello di Montalcino Sangiovese, Vino Nobile di Montepulciano Sangiovese. So I think that Sangiovese has, I think, more than 100 clones, which means little difference in terms of genetic stuff that varies from clone of Sangiovese to clone of Sangiovese. At that time, because when they were producing Sangiovese in Montepulciano, the idea of the Prugnolo Gentile came out from, it was just a way of calling the Sangiovese, because Prugnolo, it reminds the Prugna, which is the plum, so this sort of a dark fruit and sweet fruit in a sense. And gentile in Italian means kind. Why? Because usually the tannins of these wines, of the Sangiovese that grows in the Montepulciano area, is very different from some of the from Montalcino. So it's a little bit more kind, meaning that it's a little bit softer, silkier. So that's why Prugnolo Gentile. Some people also say that Prugnolo, again, to remind the Prugna, so the plum, that has this sort of shape, oval shape, because at that time, maybe because they had some diseases in their vineyard, they saw the grapes that were a little bit with this sort of shape. So they call it Prugnolo Gentile also for this reason. So, however, there is no scientific document who says that the Sangiovese from Montepulciano is a Prugnolo Gentile. This is just a way to call it that way, okay?
Well, I think it's a lovely name. It has a real romance about it.
It has a lot of stories, all the stuff in Italy.
Yeah. Should we taste?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you are the master of wine, so I won't say any word.
No, you are the font of all knowledge on this, Riccardo. The joys of being a master of wine and the wine universe being so big is the fact that you can never know everything and you're always learning. And that's why I love tastings like this. Because
well, I mean, what I feel at the nose, as I said, you have these red fruits, you know, these are very coming to your nose, which is the typical, I would say, smell of the Sangiovese when there is sun. When you put it in the mouth and you taste it, as you can see, you don't have this impression of toughness and, you know, over tannins, and no, it's very soft. It has this sort of acidity that I was telling you before, which creates this character of the wine, which is not super light, but it's not at the same time super heavy. So you drink it really with everything. I mean, it happens here in Italy, you know, when you have also, I would say, appetizer and you have some prosciutto, cold meats, whatever, you can drink it and it's enjoyable.
I love the texture of the Prunello Gentile tannins. They're just very, almost like velvet across the palate. Yeah. Really lovely. Lovely, that dark fruit, little bit of licorice, sort of mocha. It's really expressive. Leather tones, you know, I love the evocative kind of smells and tastes of wines from here. They give us so much more. And I think, you know, a lot of people will go for Sangiovese and Chianti because we all understand it. It's easy to say, but this expression you're getting from Montepulciano is lovely. Yeah, and as you say, as it's called, it's the noble wine of Montepulciano.
Yeah, it is. And also follow the tradition, because we are vinifying it. I mean, we are not vinifying, but we are aging it in the big botte. The botte, you know, is the big wood cask, typical from Tuscany, which goes usually from 25 hectoliters up to 45 and so on. And it stays there for 1 year because the botte doesn't release any, I would say, wood aromas, but it's just the perfect aging recipient for the Sangiovese, especially if you want to obtain a Sangiovese that, of course, has to have character, but at the same time, it doesn't have to doesn't have to bother you in the mouth. I don't know how to say it. It doesn't have to be too heavy.
I think this is the joy of Sangiovese and winemaking in Italy is the use of these larger oak casks, the botti, that just allow oxygen in but don't overwhelm the fruit, and so you can get the expression from the vineyard, which is what we all are pursuing now, you know. And I think perhaps a lot of people in the past have had the misconception that perhaps bigger companies, even though Antinori is a family business, perhaps they use a lot of new French oak to sort of polish the wines, but that's very much not the way of winemaking within the estates of Antinori, is it? It's a pursuit of the vineyard expression rather than the Cooper's expression. I think it's really, really important. I've got questions about the retail prices. I'll find out for you guys, and I'll answer those on the chat. Okay, so those were delicious start to our tasting today. We're going to move on to the expression of the more international varieties, and we're going to talk about the influx of international varieties in Italy in general. And Syrah obviously has become a famous DOCG of Cortona. And then, as Georgia was saying, she is very much the champion of the Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot from Maremma. So I always worry when one of my panel walks off just before I'm about to ask him to say something, but he's back with his Acello. So over to you, Riccardo, to talk about your Acello from Cortona, which is Syrah. And I don't know how many of you guys listening knew that Syrah is one of the sort of famous grapes of Cortona. And it'll be really interesting to taste this morning. So over to you, Riccardo.
Yes, so I'm here with the Acello. So Acello is totally different world. Even if we have maybe 3, 4, 5 kilometers, it's totally changed. I mean, it's totally another world. So the Cortona DOC is such a recent appellation because it was founded in the 20s, in the 2000, okay? So it only has 20 years, which is nothing compared to the other appellation in Tuscany. But I mean, there were these few growers, of which we were part, of course, that we found out that there were many similarities with one of the, I would say, the homeland of Syrah, which is the Côte d'Or in France. And we got actually inspired from that. And because we had the climate, which is very similar, we had the soil, which is very similar. I'm talking about, for example, those sandy soils that you can also find in the Côte d'Or Septentrionale, so the northern part, especially in Côte d'Or, these little, beautiful places, and they produce Syrah. So we were lucky to have this wonderful estate where we could grow Syrah that was very similar to the let's say area in France, and it was a bit different from the Australian ones and Californian ones and South American ones because of this, again, of the acidity, of the temperature, of the difference of temperature between day and night. So these allow us to produce finally good qualitative Syrah. And Akelo is the first level of Syrah. So it's Akelo, it comes from the name of the god, which you can see in the background behind the name. Now, this is the new label, which will be from the 2019. Many of you at home maybe saw the old label. There was this little god here. And he was the god of the abundance, so being healthy and have. So that's why we compare it to the wine, because you have wine when you are fine, when you're happy and you want to enjoy. And well, it's mainly Syrah, clearly. Also here, depending on the vintage, we may add some tiny bit of Merlot. And 30% of the total blend spent almost 6 months in stainless steel tanks in order to keep the freshness and the aromacity of the wine and of the Syrah. While the 70% has a passage in barrels of second and third passage, and I'll tell you why barrels, in order to have this, to get a little bit more structure. As you know, Syrah is such a variety very rich in polyphenols that includes tannins, anthocyanins, flavonols, and so on. So to make it easy, when you have a lot of these chemical compounds, you need air in order to let them, equilibrate and balance themselves. So that's why we decided to use the barrel, because clearly the barrel, being a small recipient, has more surface of the wine in contact with the recipient itself. So you have a better exchange in oxygen. And this allows us to have a much more balanced wine. Also, this wine is meant to be a wine for aperitifs, but you can also have a dinner with it. Clearly, it's totally different from the Nobile, because there are two different varieties. One is autochthone, one is international. The taste is different. The color of the wine, I'm sure you saw, that is much more purpley rather than the, I would say, red and brown of the Nobile. And also the smell is much more, I would say, aromatic, more pepper, which is the typicity of the variety itself. So
it's lovely because it has the expression of a Northern Rhone Syrah, but with a little bit more weight of ripe fruit, which just gives you that expression of Cortona. Yeah. It is lovely. And you say the black pepper, I love that black pepper, smoky bacon hint. It's really there. I'm dying to try it. That's right.
So, I mean, of course, being a Syrah, the more you keep it open, the more it expresses. It's incredible, the Syrah, because if you leave this wine or the Bramasole that we'll see in a few moments in the glass and then you taste it later on, you will have totally different aromas, and it really breathes the wine. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's lovely plum tones to it, and that sort of dark coffee sort of hint on the finish. And as you say, because Syrah is quite reductive, using those older oak barrels, you have this breadth of flavor, and you're not sort of tying it into itself, which you can see with quite a lot of Syrahs nowadays. They have reductive qualities that you really don't want to be there, but this is full of expression. Yeah, it's lovely, Riccardo. Really, really good. Thank you. Yeah, I hope everyone's going to have a chance to go back to these later and put them back in their little sample pots. Okay, Georgia, let us have a look at Braccesca, please.
Yes, So Prosecco is a blend of our two principal varieties, Cabernet Sauvignon for 60% and 40% of Cabernet Franc. So yeah, as I was telling before, Mortelle is based on these international varieties. So our climate, our really long ripening seasons, dry and warm, our let these varieties to fully mature and have expressions that that can be elegant, even if we have a lot of sun and high temperatures. The thing is that proximity to the sea, along with the dominant wind here in the region, called maestrale, really mitigate our temperatures and offer they have a cooling effect during summer and a warming effect during winter. So we can have Cabernets that they are full-bodied with tannins that they are fully mature, but at the same time we have not jammy aromas. We have black fruit, red fruit. We have yeah, and some herbaceous character of these varieties. But yeah, so as I was saying, Prosecco. You want to say something?
No, don't worry.
Okay. So yeah, as I was saying, Prosecco is a blend of these two varieties. I'd like to say simple wine, but please don't let me be misunderstood. I mean, simple is good. I really enjoy Prosecco, and I mean, I actually enjoy it much more often than our other wines. But I mean, it's simple, but at the same time with a character, it's a really sapid wine. We have a lot of aromas of red fruit and hints of mint and tobacco. It's a wine, by the way, that has almost 1 year aging in barrels, but second and third hand barrels. So the idea was, as you were saying before, not to cover the varietal character and the expression of our vineyards. Prosecco is coming from the vineyards that have more sandy and less clay soils. So they're soils that are more warm and can have expressions of Cabernets that they're more easy. I mean, without going too overripe, they have more freshness and easy to drink.
Does the sandy soil make it difficult when in particularly dry years? How do you deal with that? Do you have to irrigate, or do you have older vines that are more stable in? Because obviously the water holding capabilities of sand is difficult, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So in the region, we do have the right to irrigate, like emergency irrigation. We don't want, we try to avoid using it, of course. Where we are focusing is in techniques in the vineyards that allow us to maintain the water availability and sometimes even increase it in years that they are really dry, such as techniques such as soil labor and mulching, and I mean, we are using a range of plants in the vineyards that can keep the moisture of the soil. We can and don't pump water from the vineyards. During the years, we see that even if we lower densities of planting, it's a good thing because we reduce water competition between the vines, and at the same time we can have more balance in terms of sugar and concentration, and not to have excessive sugars and concentration, having more yield per plant. And yeah, we are focusing on techniques in the vineyard so that we can manage this.
Yeah, it's really good. Okay, so let's taste it.
Yep. So as I was telling you, in the mouth, we really have really soft tannins that makes it easier to enjoy earlier. And we have hints of dried fruits and white pepper in the mouth as well. It's a really good and expressive wine, and really good value for money wine. I mean, it's.
Yeah, it's lovely. I love the texture again. As you say, it's supple, really easy drinking. It's kind of like, what day are we on today? It's a Wednesday wine. Just, you know, you sit down at the end of the day and it's got lots of complexity, lots of flavors, that lovely lifted sort of red currant flavor. I love the expression of Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's interesting what you say about the texture. Sorry, I share an office. It's interesting what you say about the texture. In that it is softer, it is gentler from the sandy soils, which is a real sort of winemaking assistant, I suppose, when you're trying to make a style like this that's more subtle, more open. Yeah, it's really lovely. I think people who talk about international varieties and their expressions around the world, this is why we can do blind tasting and work out where they come from, because there's a real difference. There's a real sense of place in this wine, despite it being a sort of classic Bordeaux variety. Yeah, it's lovely. Well done. Okay, so let's move on because we have a few wines to get through. We have, okay, hold on. There we go. So we're going to have two Syrahs. We're going to have a look at the ageability of Syrah in Cortona, and also the reason I've written laws and regulations is something that Riccardo has actually touched on already, which was the fact that they brought in the DOCG for Cortona, especially for Syrah, which is what they've done in many regions in Italy, so that they're under law. I'll let Riccardo talk about it rather than getting my tongue twisted about it. But we have the two vintages of the Bramasole now, and those are in 5 and 6 in your samples, in case you're getting a bit confused, as I was just then. So the two vintages we have are the 16 and the 13, which we're really looking forward to. I'm looking forward to comparing them anyway. And both of them are in stock in Ireland. So if you have a favorite, you know where to come. Okay, over to you, Riccardo.
Yeah, so thank you again. So Bramasole, first of all, the name Bramasole means like bramare. It's the verb that means craving, so desiring. Bramare, and sole is sun, so that's something that actually it reflects the wine itself, because as you can, if you start tasting it, both the 16 and the 13, you have immediately this idea of something very ripened, you know, because this plot, because it's coming from a single vineyard, this plot is very well exposed. You have a lot of sun hitting during the summer, and the fact that you have sandy soil clearly put in a little bit of stress the plant. But as I always like to say, wines are a little bit like human. So when you have this sort of little stress, you are pushed to do more, right? When you have too much stress, you give up. And when you don't have any stress, then you take it easy. So you think about other stuff. So having this sort of little stress really pushed the wine, the Bramasole in this case, to express his power. Because as you can taste in the 2013, that now has almost 6-7 years, you still have this power, but at the same time you still have this acidity. So it's a wine that it seems still young, right? But at the same time, you can drink it right now because it's pleasurable. It gives you this sort of sensation of sweetness, which is not in terms of residual sugar, because all our wines have 0 point something grams sugar residual. So nothing. It's dry for the lower regulation. But you have this impression, this sweetness that is only the fruits that are ripened. And again, you have the pepper. Again, you have all these sort aromatic flavors. I'm talking about also some licorice. And I mean, this is a little bit the typicity of the Syrah. Of course, if you wouldn't be able to produce a Syrah which tastes of these aromatic things, then it will mean that you do something wrong, because what we do is to reflect what we have in the soil and we put it into a glass. So we don't like to intervene. Clearly, we help the wine to perform at its best. That's why we are using, in this case, only in this case, the new barrels, French oak, because it really needs, because this wine is so powerful that it needs to have a longer aging respect to the Achelo. So it's about 15 to 18 months of barriques, and then 2 years in bottle before being out to be sold, actually. So
I think what's really interesting tasting the two together is the fact that both of them still taste so young, but also you have a real vintage variation going on here. So you have a sort of floral, high-toned fragrance in the 16, which is very specific in its aromatics. And then on the 13, there's a denser texture to it, and it's just more fruit and more savory. It's a stronger kind of wine. And I know that 16 was an outstanding vintage for you guys. And you can really see the expression is just, it's dancing on the palate and on the aromatics. And then, but the 13 is lovely because it's a real, like, sort of almost, it's a real powerhouse of like just expression and muscle. I love the difference and the fact that you can have these vintage variations. And who knew today that we would be coming and tasting two Syrahs from Cortona, just up the road from Montepulciano, and see such difference like we would in the Northern Rhone. I think it's really exceptional. It's really interesting. Yeah,
that's exactly the beauty. I mean, what I like the wine to be is like to be respectful for the vintage, because it means that you are doing the best with what you have. You're not adding something or cutting something. You are there to make it perform at its best. That's it. You don't have to do nothing else. So that's exactly what you can tell by tasting two different vintage of the same wine, which aged the same way, the same recipient, the same everything, the same period of maceration. So it's really a matter of climates. It's a matter of soils. It's a matter of what the Syrah feels to produce in that particular vintage. I forgot to say at the beginning that when we bought the estates in 1990, then we start to replant all our vines or our vineyards, because they were very old. The density for plantation was not that nice. So we replanted all step by step. So nowadays we have the perfect age for the vines, which are all between 18 years and 25 years. So it's really, I think, their maximum expression. They're not too old, they're not too young. They have their own roots, which are really well formed, and so it's the perfect moment, actually. So
yeah, they're coming into their own, and as you say, you have another 20 years of them being in their prime, 20, 30 years longer. So it's really, really exciting. Yeah, those were really lovely. And what percentage of new oak was it? Was it sort of 60, 70% or?
Yeah, it's about 60, 70%. Then it depends on the vintage mainly. When you tend to extract more, because you have a very nice, I'm talking about the 16 for instance. The 16 was the perfect vintage. You have cold winter, a lot of rain, so the soil had all this water to keep to deal then with the summer that was super dry. But at the end, you got the berries that were perfectly balanced, and that was perfect. So you could extract as much as you can, because they were perfect, they were healthy, they were perfect relationship between pulp and skin, and you have perfect technological ripeness, you have perfect phenological ripeness. It was like really the top vintage ever. and as well as the 13, as well as the 11, for example. Those were all great vintages. So it's funny. It was funny also for me to taste today those two vintages. It was really interesting because you can really tell. Clearly, the 13 was a little bit hotter. That's maybe why you were feeling a little bit more nerve, more vibrancy. But I mean, the balance is what we are always looking for. And I think we did, especially in the 16, because climate condition was perfect. The vintage was unbelievable, and we try to do our best to produce such a nice wine. However, yes, we mainly use new oak because they need a little bit of, also the release of some specific tannins of the barrels that kind of protect a too easy and fast aging of the wine itself. So when you have some new oak, that these give you this sort of protection. So yeah, mainly it depends. Sometimes it's the 70% new oak, sometimes it's 100% new oak. It really depends on the vintage.
Yeah, it's well, I think they're delicious, and I hadn't tried them for a while, and I have to say that I'm really sad I've only got a little pot. And I'm actually going to line them up beside their number to drink later because they're too good to go in the spittoon. So thank you very much, Riccardo. Okay, so I'm going to move on with our slides, which aren't really, there we go. So, and now we've got the final two wines of our tasting, which is really sad because I think it's just been fascinating. You guys are amazing, and I've learnt loads, and I hope everyone else is enjoying it as much as I am. And the wines are singing in the glasses. I think it must be a fruit day or a flower day today, but they're showing really well. So we're going to start off. We're going to start with Riccardo. There's no rest for the wicked here. I'm going to ask you to taste your Braccesca first. Look, yeah, no rest. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm ready. So now is from 100% Syrah to 100% Sangiovese. So it's again a big
change your hat. Yeah.
Yeah, I really suggest you to, I don't know, reach your glass, find a way, I don't know, because clearly we are talking about two different varieties, two different way of aging and producing, really making wine. Here we are back on the Montepulciano side. When Harriet before gently show us the picture where we had those two little hills, I say we are on Valiano, and on the other side we have closer to Montepulciano we have clay soils. Oh, that one, yeah, before, yeah. However, and the next one, next one again. Oh, there we go, perfect. Yeah, so here we are exactly on where you can see the the upper part where is Montepulciano, 600 meter. So the top one, the one that is really brown, I would say, and then the one that is a little bit gray, bluish, okay? So those are the two areas where we have those sort of vineyards, especially Santa Pia, which is again the name of the plot of vineyard itself, is located in the gray-blue clay area. So you have the clay, which really gives this sort of nerve and structure to the wine, because again it's Sangiovese, and it's a Vino Nobile di Montepulciano Riserva, meaning that it ages for 1 more year. In this case, because it's the Sangiovese is one of the top Sangiovese that we produce, we tend to use tonneau, which is sort of a medium way between the barrels and the botte. Barrels stops at 225 for Burgundy people, 28, 228, but well, then you have the botte that goes over up to 25 hectoliters and so on. But when you have the tonneau, we are talking in this case about 300 liters recipient, so a little bit bigger from the normal barrels that you see. And why this? Because clearly when you extract more, again, you need more protection, you need more contact with oxygen, and you need to sustain the wine until it's ready to be bottled. And then it also ages in bottle for almost 2 years. So it spends maybe 1 year, 12 to 15 months in tonneau, and then it's only bottled. Because if you keep too much the wine in the barrels, then you have the wood flavors coming in, and you don't want to make wines that all taste like wood. You want to express the variety. So you only use the wood for that purpose. So Santa Pia, I'll taste it with you. Just a second, I put it in my glass. There we go. So first of all, the color. Here we are talking about the 15 vintage, okay? I mean, 2015 vintage. Of course, the color is very different from the Syrah. Clearly, we are not talking about any purple thing, not at all. Here we are on brownish, reddish, brownish. Now this is a wine that has 5-6 years, but you can tell immediately from the taste, you have this sort of, I'll say, fresh characters. Those are all primary aromas mainly, so coming from the, from the vineyard itself. Just a few secondary, so coming from the what is fermentation and aging process. And you start having also a little bit of the tertiary, because you start feeling a little bit this sort of age flavor. But
I love the texture of it. It's really gripping. It's a you can imagine having this with a serious steak or something. It's that kind of wine that would just work wonderfully with a meal full of protein like that. But I just I love the mineral depth that this has. It's surprising. There's a minerality in there that I didn't expect. It carries the acid along its sort of core, if you like. It's delicious. Yeah, really showing well. And again, 15 was a ripe year, wasn't it? So it wasn't massively ripe, but it retains an elegance that's lovely. But it's still, again, so young. I mean, how long will this last for, Riccardo?
I mean, I like to drink wines not more than 20-30 years, but I'm sure it can last really as much as you want. I mean, clearly it's not, I don't know, it's not a Bordeaux wine, but again, Sangiovese, if you think about also lots of the Pinot Nobile and also lots of the Brunello di Montalcino, they can age really 20, 25, 30, 35 years, no doubt on that. Clearly, when you have these sort of hot vintages, you may risk to have a recent, I don't know, not crash of the wine. I wouldn't say that, but when you have a hot vintage, the vines suffer a little bit more. So the wine, it kind of it arrives tired, in the bottle. Of course, we are talking about after 20 years, 25, 30 years. So when you have those sort of hot vintages, I would prefer to drink it after maximum 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
But when you have vintages like 2016, I wouldn't have any problem to let it live again for other years, because
the problem is keeping such a good wine hidden for so long. You'd have to lock it in a cupboard and forget it was there. This is the problem in this house, especially in lockdown, Riccardo.
Yeah.
All the crown jewels are being robbed, by myself. In my own house anyway. Okay, so thank you for that. But I just think it's utterly delicious. And I know a lot of us aren't particularly familiar with La Braccesca and the wines because it's not a trendy region, if you like, and it's a little bit more difficult to understand. But that's why we did this tasting, so that everyone could enjoy the wines and hear the story behind them. And I really think you're going to have a whole new fan base after this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Georgia, over to you for your Poggio alla Nonna, which is one of my favorite wines. I just think it's outstanding. So
okay.
I'm really looking forward to this.
Okay, thank you very much for the compliment. Yeah, Poggio alle Nanne, it's as you say in the slide, that it's the pursuit of quality and longevity, and I would add precision as well. It's a wine that was born to be the flagship wine of Le Mortelle. Its name in Italian means hill of the wild ducks, that they are here at Mortelle. We do have a big lake, so they used to live there. You can actually see them even nowadays. So the vineyards of Poggiolenane that are from the hilly parts that you can see part of them in the photo behind the bottles. And the lake is our lake, yeah. So they're coming from these vineyards. Poggiolenane was meant not to be another Bordeaux blend wine. We wanted to differentiate ourselves, itself from, I repeat myself and I say Guadaltasso, but just because it's our closest reference and biggest competitor inside Antinori's family. So yeah, it was a way to differentiate as well inside Maremma, because we do have a lot of Merlot-based wines, Cabernet Sauvignon-based wines, Sangiovese-based wines blended with Cabernets, but Cabernet Franc-based wines, they are rare. So through the years, we were getting more convinced that that was the right choice because of the really gracious expression of Cabernet Franc here at Mortelle. Till 2015, where we finalize our blend, which is 80% Cabernet Franc and just small parts of Cabernet Sauvignon and Carmenère, 10% each, that complete the blend. So the grapes, as I was telling you, they are coming from the hilly parts of the estate, where the soils are more clay ones, with sand being a big part of it. But on the surface, we do have a lot of stones. So at the same time, we have exposures that are facing east to minimize a bit the sun exposure. So yeah, here in Mortelle, we have the other way around problem. We are not looking towards the sun because it's, in this way, we do have more elegant expressions, and yes, that we are looking for our wines.
Your Carmenère vineyard is very interesting, isn't it? It's the only vineyard of Carmenère in the area, is it? Is that right there? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. In Maremma, it's a big peculiarity. I mean, in Italy in general, you cannot find it everywhere, but in Maremma, yeah, it's kind of unique. Antinori family, I mean, in Marchese, together with Renzo Cottarella, decided to put it in Maremma after the big experience that they had in Chile from the estate that Antinori has there, Haras de Pirque. So they decided to bring it to Italy and plant it in Maremma. Because the idea was that Carmenère is a really demanding in terms of ripening variety. So at Mortelle, we did have all the ideal conditions to have a really interesting expression. And if we judge from the results, I mean, they had the right idea.
Yeah, I'm dying to taste this one now. So yeah.
Yeah, so Poggiolenane is a really precise wine, as I was telling you, because in the cellar we do have, apart from the great selection in the parcel, we do have in the cellar berry selection. We have a great attention and precision that are the most precious tools. The fermentation and extractions are made in particular steel tanks that they are hanging from the seal. And their particular form, together with the use of punching downs, helping us to preserve all the quality of the fruit by having the maximum extraction in the most gentle way. So all the quality and the varietal expression of the Cabernet Franc is there.
I love Cabernet Franc because it gives you that sort of herbaceous box tree note that stands alone and almost gives it more structure, especially with your warm climate. It offers that sort of more structure, more finesse, that perception of freshness even in warmer vintages, doesn't it?
I lost you a bit.
I hope my internet's behaving. I saw an unstable thing a minute ago. I was just saying that the Cabernet Franc gives a lovely expression of adds structure and a perception of freshness, which is very needed in your warm climate.
Exactly.
And I think it's such an interesting grape variety. And what it's producing here, and the Carmenere as well has that sort of spicy fruit, doesn't it? So
exactly.
That's what we're getting. And this wine, the 17 vintage, was quite warm, but it doesn't taste overripe, does it?
Yes, we do have a vintage in the glass that it was really warm and dry, so resulted into wines that they are really concentrated. They have a lot of fruit, black fruit, and concentration that will give to the wine, without doubt, a really long potential in aging. But yeah, we do have the Cabernet Franc character, as you were saying. You can feel a bit of eucalyptus, a bit of wild mint there, together with the spiciness of Carmenere, as you said. I mean, Carmenere in Mortelle, it's amazing. We did taste Carmenere after fermentation before put it in the barrels. That tasted like chocolate. I mean, we have expressions of Carmenere that you can feel it in the glass, even if it's just 10%. You can totally feel it.
Yeah, it's lovely. The complexity of this wine is outstanding, and it is such a baby. It's such a pity to open it so early, but it's drinking beautifully now. But I think in 7 to 10 years we'll be looking at an amazingly beautiful, elegant wine. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving because we're hitting the timing now, and I'll try and be good. We did touch on climate change. And the influences of what was happening. I think what was interesting when Georgia was talking about your work with water, because we spoke about the 2017 vintage and how dry it was and how hot. And these vintages, these extremes, are just going to become more prominent in viticulture. So the fact that you're working with lower densities in the vineyard, less vines, that is, so each vine has a longer stretch to achieve water access than other vines. And also the fact that you're working with cover crops and mulching to contain some of that sacred humidity is really important. Are there any other points that you want to add at this point about the sort of climate change and how the Antinori teams are reacting to it?
Well, the important thing that we do focus in minimizing our impact in the environment, which indirectly helps to all that. So in the vineyard as well, apart from the winery that is, as we described, in a sustainable design, in the vineyards we do have a lot of techniques that they are sustainable. We have a integrated pest management, so we do have a lot of investing a lot on monitoring insects, on encouraging predators, on supporting, as we said, a range of plants, and using pheromones. So they are all techniques that we choose to follow, both for ethical and technical reasons. Because I mean, the more we work in harmony with the territory and with our terroir, the greater expressions we gain for our wines. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've had a couple of questions about because I think Bordeaux have sort of put it in everyone's mind, the Bordelais and their new varieties. I'm not sure I'm massively excited about trying a Touriga Nacional from Bordeaux. Let's hope that it doesn't come to that. But Luis was asking, would you consider planting other late ripening varieties like Petit Verdot, especially with warming climate and low risk of spring frost? So what are your thoughts there?
So yeah, we do have, as we said, really late ripening varieties. I mean, I cannot think anyone more late ripening than Carmenère. But yeah, we do have Petit Verdot. We do have Petit Verdot in the property, which gives great results. But for the moment, we are not using it to our blends. Yeah, it goes for other wines of Antinori. Yeah, we keep experimenting. I mean, another experiment that is coming to my mind in the vineyards is the late pruning. It's a pruning that you finalize after bud burst, so that you can reduce sugars accumulation without delaying the maturity of phenols. But yeah, they're all experiments and we're working on it. But I mean, the biggest tool that we have other than the vineyard is blendings in the cellar. So blendings of different parcels, blendings of different harvest dates. So that's what we are trying to do with what we are doing with Vivia. So Vermentino, for example, is a local variety really adapted to hot weather and dry climates, but lacks in acidity. So what we are doing is harvest a parcel, part of Vermentino a bit earlier so that we can keep acidity in our blend, and another part a little bit later so we can have more mature aromas, more ripened aromas, and more full body Vermentino.
Yeah, I think that's the point, isn't it? You have different altitudes, you have different soils, you have different expositions. Thanks to your hilly topography, and you also have your lake, which I love.
Yes.
I love your lake. I keep looking at your lake, and it's the same for Riccardo. You have lots of choices and opportunities, which is really fascinating. And as you say, it's gone are the years when the winemaker would go on holiday in August and not worry about his vineyard, it would grow itself. Nowadays, everyone is watching what is happening and picking early, picking specific plots at different times to bring elements of freshness. It's very much a balancing act, because the climate doesn't make it easy at all.
No.
Thanks to climate change. So I don't see any more questions, and I'm gonna hopefully my internet isn't being unstable like it's telling me it is. Hold on for a few more minutes, internet. I just want to thank everyone today for listening to us. I want to thank you guys, the panel, for being here and helping arrange this and sending over samples of the new vintages, and the insight we got from Riccardo and Georgia was fantastic. And obviously Filippo brings the glamour, as does Chiara. So, thank you so much, guys. And I want to thank our customers for coming and listening and being interested in wine, because as a company, that's what we're all about, is knowledge and learning more and more about wine. We love it. And, the more you learn, the more you enjoy it, especially at the moment where a lot of us are probably downing a little bit of wine, waiting for this lockdown to end and for light to come at the end of the tunnel. I think this morning, hopefully, has cheered you all up. It's cheered me up anyway. It's reminded me why we're here and what we love about wine. I love the Antinori family story. I love the fact it's a family. I love the fact it's all about innovation. Piero leads from the front, but his three daughters are very much involved now. And I like the fact that there's a real feminine influence coming in here. And it's great to have Georgia here as a female winemaker. Sorry, Riccardo, obviously you're great as well, but you know, there's more of you. Yeah.
Anyway.
And I, you know, what I hadn't really appreciated with Cortona was the similarities with the Northern Rhone. And I didn't realize that Poggio alla Nana means hill of the wild ducks. I think that's great. That's now my favorite sort of saying of the day. And insights, Georgia, you're brilliant with your sort of climate change and your work there and explaining it. Thank you for that, because it's really fascinating for all of us. Jeff and all the team who got the samples ready, amazing, brilliant.
May I say one thing? No,
Of course you can, Filippo.
Thank you personally for the great job you have done in organizing such a wonderful tasting. I also thank all of the participants. I very much hope they like the wines. I also take the opportunity to thank Georgia and Riccardo. They did a splendid job. It was an occasion for me to learn more, by the way, because sometimes enologists keep secrets, and sometimes bit by bit they
you
release.
have to pay to have them.
I know, that is the problem. That is the problem. So I don't pay, I don't get new information. So I repeat always the same old story of 20 years ago. But time changes. But in any case, thank you very much, Harriet. Thank you very much for having managed to gather such, let's say, many important customers and let's say wine passionate people around us today. And we all very much hope to get these people here at Antinori visiting our estates. One, this, let's say, COVID pandemic will have gone. The sooner the better.
I'm so with you there. I'm so with you there, Filippo. Yeah, the sooner the better we can get into normal life. And thank you all again.
Thank you.
And I've just remembered one point, Georgia, you made about your competition being Guado al Tasso, and I'm very competitive, and I'm with you on that. But I think you've got a winner here, because you have Cabernet Franc, and that's, you know, I think that is the grape of the future with climate change and with its structure and its lovely acidity. So yes. Move over, Guado al Tasso. Lo Mortale is on the way.
It should not be heard by Marco Ferrarese. He won't be happy.
No, well, it's okay. It's all right. We're going for your team, even though they're both delicious wines and very different. But no. And just a little bit of housekeeping, guys. If anyone's on Instagram, I'm going to be talking to Ross Lewis tonight on trade talks, and we're just going to talk about Ross and his amazing mentorship and his life in the restaurant business. It's on the Tyndall channel at 6 o'clock tonight, and it won't go on for an hour and a half. Yeah, great. And we'll have a glass of Antinori while we're talking.
I hope so.
Yeah, we will.
You owe us.
That's all I drink, Filippo. I mean, you know.
Clearly. This is well known amongst master of wine. You are the first master of wine teetotal, so it's unbelievable, an incredible achievement.
Oh, well, thank you, Filippo, and thank you all again. And I'm going to end it now so people can go about their day on this. You have your sunshine, we have our rain, but we now have a lovely array of wines to think about. So thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Nice.
Bye.